I don't know about you, but we're announcing millions of dollars for the Bronx. Let's give it up for Governor Andrew Cuomo. Buenos dias. Good morning. Is the Bronx in the house? All right, there we go. I know it's warm outside, it's cool in here, but it's gonna get cooler when you find out the details of this announcement. I'm Assemblymember Marcos Crespo. Thank you for joining us this morning for what is really an exciting day for us in the Bronx. I will be introducing some special guests. I want to acknowledge some of the leaders who are joining us today. First of all, the president of this amazing and historic institution, Boricua College. Let's give it up for President Victor Alicea. It's like you have your own in-house crowd there, Victor. I don't know. That was a setup. We also have some great leaders, Senator Gustavo Rivera, Senator Luis Sepulveda, Assemblywoman Natalia Fernandez, Councilmember Andy King, our Deputy Borough President, Marika Scott McFadden, members of the Governor's Administration, Rosana Rosado, our Secretary of State, Howard Zemsky, the President and CEO, Empire State Development Corporation. Let's give it up. We also have Danny Barber, the President of Nycha Citywide Council of Presidents. Come on, Danny, stand up, man. Come on, don't be shy now all of a sudden. We also have Michael Nixon representing Marlene Cintron from the Bronx Overall Economic Corporation. Let's give it up. And of course, all of the members of the New York City Regional Economic Development Council and the DRI Local Planning Committee here with us today. Let's give it up for them as well. We are going to hear from President Zemsky. We're going to hear from our governor. We're going to hear from State Senator Luis Sepulveda and Assemblyman Michael Blake. But first, I just want to tell you that as the governor comes up here, I want to put something into context. For all of us who love the Bronx, who call the Bronx home, and who have been a part, and everybody in this room has played a role in the growth and the prosperity that we're seeing in our community. Yes, there's a lot of work to be done. Yes, there are things that need our immediate attention. And that'll always be the case. There will always be a laundry list. But let's take a moment to think about some of the progress that we've had. And if you look at the leadership of our governor, it's not just what he's done in Puerto Rico, so many families calling the Bronx home, who have watched as our governor led the way bringing resources to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria before the president or any other executive in this state acted. He was already on the ground, and both Congresswoman Nycha Velázquez and I were able to join him. But that's the governor's leadership. Doesn't wait for anybody. He acts when needed, and he brings resources to support. It's the same thing he's done for immigrant families, standing up and making sure that the state of New York, working with the Attorney General's office and working with other leaders, fighting at the forefront against this Trump administration, which every day finds a new way to attack immigrant families. But it's not just those national issues. It's right here at home. And look at what's happened in the Bronx. And if you think about the millions of dollars the governor was able to get for us to keep jobs in the Hunts Point market, if you think about the hundreds of millions of dollars the state, through the governor's leadership, has given for housing development in our borough, for our park revitalization, if you think about the investment in the urban youth tax credit, which allows many of our young people to get jobs in local businesses, if you think about the investment into our infrastructure and the $1.8 billion we had announced months ago for the Bruckner-Sheridan interchange, a project that's been talked about for 40 years, and until the leadership of Governor Cuomo, now we finally have the resources to see something come to fruition. That is leadership that changes the name of the game. That is leadership that has brought unemployment in the Bronx to record lows. That is the kind of leadership that has transformed the borough of the Bronx. Working with our borough president, the governor's been instrumental in so many of the changes and so many of the good things that are happening. And today, we take it one step further. We've been at I don't know how many of you have been joining us. It feels like we're doing one of these every week, Governor. And you're welcome to keep coming back. Every time you come, you bring resources. We'll have you. We'll find something else to spend on. But the fact of the matter is that today we have another exciting announcement that's going to help our communities grow, that's going to invest in our local business, that's going to revitalize our neighborhoods. And I'm excited about what today is going to be presented. But let me introduce, before we hear from the governor, the president and CEO of the Empire State Development Corporation, none other than Howard Zemsky.
All right, good morning, everyone. Great to be with you all the way from beautiful Buffalo. I always say, as I talk about state transformation, from the Bronx to Buffalo. Now, don't hold it against me that I come from Buffalo. Actually, I grew up in this part of the state. I've been in Buffalo for 37 years, so I've seen the kind of transformation in Buffalo that you have seen here, which is fabulous. And we both have a governor who has become our best friend. Buffalo, go on. Now, because I was away from New York for a while, I wasn't hip to all the acronyms. So when I got back to New York and I was in meetings talking about what's going on in different regions of the state, the term SOBRO came up. I'm like, what's SOBRO? South Bronx. I'm like, who needs Soho when you got SOBRO? So you have come a long way. You have come a very long way. And the governor's commitment to economic development here and the partnership with local leadership, with Ruben and Marlene, and with Department of State and ESD and all the other state agencies has made a big difference. We have a great team effort happening in economic development here. And the governor's belief in you, in your developing your own plans for your future, the downtown revitalization is all about that. It's all about you identifying civic improvement opportunities and investments that can unlock the potential of the South Bronx. And that's what we have, and that's what we're announcing today. So, if I can just find the clicker somewhere. Who has the clicker? Ah, here is the magical clicker. I'm going to take you through, because you know summer can't start and your 4th of July holiday can't start without a PowerPoint presentation. So here we go. The South Bronx, I bet you can find yourself on that map. Have you noticed all the other cities in the state have little red circles? You guys have a gold star, which says a lot about who you are and how incredibly well you're doing now. There was a competition all across the state with over 100 applicants to win the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, of which only 10 winners, 10 out of over 100. Congratulations, because as you know, the South Bronx was one of them. Now, being one of 100, or being one of 10 winners, says you guys did something right. You put together a great plan. And the governor and ESD and DOS are happy to support your vision for the revitalization of the South Bronx. And we're going to talk about how we're investing $10 million in the community and go through some of the projects that are being funded. 12 projects are getting funded with the $10 million DRI awards. $2.5 million to create an attractive tree-lined pedestrian plaza on the 149th Street Bridge, providing space for vendors, art, and other recreational activities. Now, you do not have to be reserved. You are welcome to applaud funding for all your projects. $1.7 million to help support vibrant, sustainable art programs at the Andrew Friedman Home Cultural Arts Center. $1 million to invest in streetscape imagery along 3rd Avenue, Melrose Avenue, and 149th Street. $1 million to create a business improvement fund supporting local business and property owners. $630,000 to expand 3 community gardens in Melrose Commons, supporting their growth with solar power, Wi-Fi, and rainwater harvesting. $595,000 to help establish the state-of-the-art Bronx Create Space Artist Maker Hub in Mott Haven. $520,000 to create a variety of dining options for local workers and shoppers in the soon-to-be-completed Roberto Clemente Plaza. $437,000 to bring high-speed broadband to residents, businesses, and visitors in Melrose Commons. $429,000 to modernize and expand the community swimming pool at Bronx Works, Carolyn McLaughlin Community Center. $260,000 to construct a new Projonas Theater space by replacing the existing outdated wood frame house. And $250,000 to modernize signage for the popular Bronx Hall of Fame along the Grand Concourse. And finally, $227,000 to create a modern, attractive gateway to the Bronx at the East 161st Street Yankee Stadium subway station. Where I was last night, actually, taking that 4 Express. I didn't stay up late enough to see the game. It wasn't a good ending, was it? All right, but we're doing great, and you're doing great, and I want to congratulate all of you, and I want to thank the governor. You can give all yourselves a round of applause. Funding for over 10 projects that really help unlock the potential of the area. You guys put together a great plan. You are one of only 10 winners out of over 100 applicants, which speaks volumes to what you've done. You have the best friend in Governor Cuomo that the Bronx has ever had. And with that, I'm going to introduce Governor Cuomo.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is my pleasure to be back. It's good to see all of you. First, let's give Howard Zemsky a round of applause for his great leadership. Congratulations to you, one of 10 winners in the state. That is a big deal. To Marcos Crespo, who's a great leader. He had to excuse himself, so I can tell the truth now that he's gone. I don't like to say good things in front of him because, you know, his ego is growing. He is a superstar. He really is. He's a phenomenal representative for the district and chairman for the Bronx, but he is a powerful voice all across the state, and he's a superstar. Let's give him a round of applause. Senator Sepulveda, who really has hit the ground running, and I can tell by the number of phone calls I get from him. He's advocating, he's pushing, he's doing a great job. Senator Sepulveda. Assemblyman Michael Blake, who's doing a great job. You'll hear from him in a moment. My other colleagues, we have Senator Gustavo Rivera with us. We have Assembly Member Natalia Fernandez, who I know she's going to be a star because she's going to be a star because she got special training before this job at a special office where they do special things. And if you come out of this office, you are really a step above. I figured, where were you before this? My office, yes. Councilman Andy King, God bless you, Andy, for the great job you're doing. We have Danny Barber, president of Nycha. Pleasure to be with Danny. Let's thank him for his advocacy. Borough President's Office, all the representatives. I'm in a little bit of a reflective mood today, so I want to give you a little perspective on today. And Marcos Crespo got me thinking. I was last night with a person who is now in New York or moved from another country. And a name came up, and I said, where's he from? And he said, he's from New York City. I said, well, where in New York City? And he said, I don't know, it's New York City. I said, well, do you mean Manhattan, the city, Manhattan? He said, I don't know, just New York City. I said, but really, there is no New York City, you know? I was born and raised in New York. There is no New York City. Are you from Manhattan, which we used to call the city? Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island? If you're from the Bronx, where in the Bronx? Are you Throgs Neck, you Co-op City, you Morris Park, right? All different. Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, these are outer boroughs. You grow up in an outer borough. It's interesting, there's no inner borough. There are only outer boroughs. But you come from an outer borough. Queens, I came from, was an outer borough. And they were outer boroughs to Manhattan. Manhattan was the inner borough. Nobody ever said that, but Manhattan was the inner borough. And you were from an outer borough. You weren't from Manhattan. I saw politics 1977. My father's running for mayor against Ed Koch, who was very popular and way ahead in the mayoral race, and it was an ugly race from day one. And I was 19 years old. I was the driver, scheduler, advance man, body person, policy director, all in one. And the mayoral campaigns are just crazy because you're doing 15 stops a day and you're driving from place to place. And we were losing through the whole campaign, so it was always a negative thing. And my father was a young man, and the testosterone was high, and he had a lot of energy, let's put it that way. And I was the driver, and it was a long, long year. He would get in the car from the event, and he had a habit. He'd get in the car, and he would close his eyes as soon as he would get in the car. He'd put his head back, he'd close his eyes, and he'd take like these little cat naps. But then he would wake up like 20 minutes later, and he always had the same question. He'd look around, he'd say, where are we? And where are we going? I said, we're going to Brooklyn, and we're on the Grand Central Parkway. Whatever route I said I took, he had an alternative route. And this was, you couldn't blame it on anyone else. There was no Google Maps. I couldn't say Waze told me. And this would go on all day long. 3 roads, if you were on, he would really lose his temper. If you were ever on the Cross Bronx Expressway, he would say, there's only one reason to be on the Cross Bronx if you're going to New Jersey. Are we going to New Jersey? Then we shouldn't be on the Cross Bronx. Van Wyck Expressway, he would say, are we going to Kennedy Airport? Otherwise, nobody in their right mind takes the Van Wyck Expressway. And the third was the BQE, Brooklyn Queens Expressway. Only tractor trailers take the Brooklyn and Queens Expressway. Nobody who's thinking ever gets on the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. Now we have to go over the Kosciuszko, which was born a bottleneck, he used to say, which it was. Then we get home, and my mother would say, well, how was today, Mario? She'd be all cheery. And he would say, your son. Like he was denying anything to do with him. Your son is trying to kill me. Traumatized me in that campaign. Still suffering from it. We're building a new Kosciuszko Bridge just to end the nightmare in my mind. We're widening Kosciuszko. We now call it the Kosciuszko Bridge, which was the proper pronunciation, as I've learned numerous times. During that campaign, 19 years old, we go to a newspaper editorial board in Manhattan. Fancy newspaper, that's what go nameless. And they're going around and they're asking questions in the editorial board. And one of the editorial writers had his glasses down on his nose and looked at my father over his glasses and he said, "Your campaign headquarters is in Queens." My father said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, how can you be taken seriously if your campaign headquarters is in Queens?" I said, "That's it. This is going to be a bad meeting." And my father said, "Well, I can't afford a headquarters in Manhattan." He said, "Well, why do you live in Queens?" And my father sort of moved in his seat. And he could go from 0 to 100 miles an hour like that, my father, with his temper. And he said, "You know, Queens, the outer boroughs, are where working people live. Your secretaries live in Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx. Your drivers live in Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx. The people who operate your presses downstairs in your basement, they live in Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx." And he said, "My parents came, they couldn't speak the language. They went to Queens because that's where you could afford to raise a family. The hard-working families of New York live in Queens." We're walking out of the room, and the editorial person who asked the question, and the meeting went downhill from there, said to my father, "You know, you have a real chip on your shoulder." And my father said, "You're damn right, I have a chip on my shoulder." And he did have a chip on his shoulder. The chip on his shoulder was the arrogance, the injustice, the duplicity, the selectivity, and how we have ignored so many people in so many places for so long. He gave a great speech at the Democratic Convention that he's most known for, called The Tale of Two Cities. Tale of Two Cities was the same point in the editorial board. There are two Americas, and there's one for the rich and the powerful, and there's another one for the poor and the less powerful. And that was his speech. And that was the chip on his shoulder. The anger at the injustice, the anger at the discrimination, the anger at the prejudice which is repugnant to what the country was supposed to be all about. Opportunity for all, discrimination of none, equal platform for everyone to do well. We've not lived up to that. There are two Americas. It was true in 1984 when he gave the speech. It's true today. Let's be honest. Let's tell the truth. If you're unwilling to recognize a problem, you'll never solve it. You still have. You still have that duality. Look at the Nycha situation. Look at the Nycha situation. No heat, no hot water. It's gone on for years. I did, with Danny Barber, all sorts of events at Nycha to bring the cameras to get these folks to come into public housing to look at the pictures, because I knew New Yorkers would be repulsed if they saw the conditions that we had people living in. But it's gone on for years. Now, do you believe the situation would have gone on for years if those were rich people living in Nycha? Do you believe if they were powerful people living in Nycha, that situation would have gone on for years? Of course not. Of course not. It would have been fixed immediately. Rikers Island. Rikers Island. Rikers Island, 2014, the Obama administration, Attorney General Eric Holder says it's a civil rights violation for young people to be in Rikers Island. 2014. This is 2018. New York City comes out with a plan that says it's going to take us 10 years to move out of Rikers Island and build new jails. 10 years. Now, there are siting issues. I understand that, especially in the Bronx, where we're going to put it. 10 years? It took you 3 years to rebuild Yankee Stadium. I'm going to build a new airport at LaGuardia in 4 years. You want to talk about complicated. To build LaGuardia, you have to deal with the federal government. You may as well bang your head against that wall right now. 10 years? You know what it means? It's not a priority. It's not a priority. Why? Who's in Rikers? Poor, young minorities. If they weren't poor, they wouldn't be there in the first place because they wouldn't have been able to make bail. That injustice, that unfairness is still alive and well in society today. And what government is supposed to be doing is fighting that injustice and fighting that unfairness and equalizing the playing field. We got the state government. We said we're going to take a different approach. Where are the poorest places in the state where people need the most help, and that's where we're going to focus. You know what the two areas? You know what the two areas were? Buffalo, New York, and the Bronx. Buffalo and the Bronx. I had this conversation with my colleagues in Albany. I said to Howard Zemsky, who's from Buffalo, we have to focus on Buffalo and the Bronx. He said, the Bronx? Where's the Bronx? I said, it's south of Buffalo. I said to Marcos Crespo and Speaker Heastie, we have to focus on Buffalo and the Bronx. They said, where's Buffalo? I said, it's north of the Bronx. But they said, you're right. Our job is to focus on the places in need. Remember where the Bronx was. Marcos Crespo did this quickly. Remember, the Bronx was a symbol of the injustice. The way you can talk about Nycha today, that was the Bronx. 1970s, 1980s in the Bronx, highest crime rate, highest unemployment rate, highest poverty rate, lost 1/5 of the population. Why? Well, the Bronx, that's where the poor people live. And the places that get attention are the places that have the powerful people. The places that have the less powerful, that's where we put the garbage transfer stations, that's where we put the facilities that no other community wants. But they are the forgotten places, they are the places left behind. And they're the exact places that the government should be paying attention. And that's what we did. And when Marcos runs through that list, we focused on the Bronx in a comprehensive, holistic way. Education, more money for public schools than ever before in the history of the state of New York. Focus on failing public schools, because the failing public schools are in the poorer communities and they're failing year after year after year, and put the resources into the failing schools. We call them community schools. So you actually provide those student populations with the help they need. You need college today. It's not enough to come out of high school. Invest in CUNY, invest in Hostos, $2 million, and provide free college tuition for middle-class families so they can make it work. Everybody needs health care. We use the Obamacare system that everybody complains about. Here in New York, we registered 1.2 million new people to have health insurance under Obamacare. You need transportation, 4 new Metro North stations in the Bronx, because it's all about transportation, fixing that Sheridan Expressway, which should have never been built in the first place, widening the Bruckner Expressway, thanks Pop, so you can actually get in and out, providing the transportation and providing the mass transportation. We need to fix the subway system because not everybody can afford an Uber every day. And that's a justice issue. And I applaud my colleagues in the legislature for having the guts to force New York City to pay half of the cost to fix the subways, because the working men and women in this city are the city people who use the subway system, and we need to make it better, and we need to make it better now. And the legislature stepped up, and they deserve a round of applause. And yes, we have more to do, but it is working. When we started, the unemployment rate in the Bronx was 11%. This May, it's 4.7%. Lowest level in 18 years. And I want you to remember one other number. You know the Bronx is the fastest growing borough in the city. 542. You know what 542 represents? That is the number of people who need to move to the Bronx to break the all-time population record. 542. Listen to this. The peak population in the Bronx was 1970, 1,471,701. We today are 1,471,160. 543 more people. And talk about the Bronx is back. The Bronx is going to be back bigger and better than ever. We're on our way. We're going to continue, and we're going to get it done. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I caught you. It's good morning still. Buenos días. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. You know why I say that? Because that represents a good portion of the population that I represent here in the Senate. Now, I was here a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, where the governor was gracious enough to endorse my candidacy for the 32nd 7th District, which includes this area here. And I talked about that City on the Hill speech by his father. Because when I was a young man, a little younger than the governor, I heard that speech. And it impacted me in a way that pushed me to make sure that I always wanted to be a person to get involved in government and help those that are in the most need of help. And we should be grateful to former Governor Cuomo for the great work that he did. And I'm happy to say, Governor, that you are following in your father's footsteps with that level of greatness. You know, this institution carries the name of the island and the people that are in my bloodstream and my DNA, that I fight for on a daily basis. I fight for all the people in my community, but there's something special to me about Boricua and Puerto Ricans because that's who I am and that's where I come from. And I can tell you that no person, and I was screaming from the bleachers, deserves more credit for helping the island when we needed the most help after the hurricane. No one else stepped up in such a great way to help the people of the island of Puerto Rico than the governor. And for that, I will always be grateful, Governor. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I came to the Bronx approximately 30 years ago, and I never left. raised my family here, and I never want to leave because this is one of the greatest places in the world to raise your family. We have now historic unemployment rates. We have the highest level of kids that are graduating from high school. We have historic drops in crime and historic investment in the Bronx. Now, some of that, a good part of that credit goes to my partners in government, people like Ruben Diaz Jr., Marcos Crespo, yes. Some of my colleagues that are here, Mike Blake, Gustavo Rivera. Hopefully Natalia will be making her imprint now also, despite the fact that she worked for the governor. But a lot of the credit, especially during his tenure as governor, a lot of the credit has to go to Governor Cuomo. You see, the governor, this initiative is a locally driven initiative that help the people that have invested their time, their energy, their set equity in this county for many, many years. This local approach is important to me because it is important that we create an environment for those individuals that remained here, that wanted to stay here, they wanted to work to improve this county. This kind of initiative will ensure that they benefit from that labor. And I thank you, Governor, because that is one of the great things that this initiative is going to do. It's going to expand arts and culture here. It's going to increase broadband service, which we all need in this county. It's going to create that kind of environment so that people continue to live here, that people want to educate their children here, and importantly, that people want to invest their money in this county. So, Governor, I want to thank you for your vision. I want to thank you for all the great work that you've done for the people of the Bronx. And I want to thank all of you, my partners in government, citizens, my constituents. And I want to thank you, Governor, because I just got elected here and you're making it look real good for me. So, yes, please. But most importantly, I want to thank him because he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the people of the Bronx. And he's been a fighter for those who need the most advocacy, not only in the state of New York, but throughout the country and the people of Puerto Rico. So thank you, Governor, and thank you for this initiative. And let's invest money in the Bronx because this is where it's at. God bless you all.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Bronx. For anyone who is not from the Bronx, let's make sure we show them some Bronx love. You can throw up the X right now. That's all right. So, don't worry, it's not a gang sign. Everybody's going to be fine right now. It's going to be fine. Governor, we thank you for continuing to show what happens when you invest in the Bronx and show support to the Bronx in all different aspects. To our colleagues in government, to our advocates, and to the leaders that are here, we are grateful for you. Buenos días, dama y caballero. Mi nombre es Miguel Blake, asambleísta para el Distrito 69. You didn't think a Jamaican could speak Spanish, did y'all, right now, right? So this is personal for us, and this is personal for me. I'm born and raised in the Bronx. Grew up Creston and Burnside. Went to PS 79, 118, DeWitt Clinton High School. This is our assembly district. This is the district that I live in right now. And this is a district that we call home. And we come to you today because it's an exciting day. When Howard was walking through the investments happening here, many of us have talked about the South Bronx in many different ways, but we have not seen investments like this ever before. You know, to Dr. Alisei and to everyone at Boricua College, thank you for always being a blessing, for allowing us to be in your space, for being an anchor institution here, for training and empowering people who didn't have access before. When we think about what's happening with this investments, what's going to happen in this aspect? When you see what's happening here in Melrose, you have to be excited about that. Anytime I see our friends from Bronxworks or from Nos Quedamos, we see what's possible and able to amplify in that aspect. From Michael Brady and changing the game, what's going on in our bids. For our communities and advocates, every time we see Reverend Rivera, it shows us how faith is reminding us to be doers of the word. This is why we're here on today. You can't be here in the South Bronx and not see Danny Barber and not see what's possible in that aspect and elevating the conversation as relates to Nycha. It is inhumane that we continue to have people living in our communities in this aspect. How is it that you can get unleaded gas, but you can't live in an apartment that doesn't have lead-free paint? It doesn't make sense in that aspect. And that's why what's happening today sends a message. People need jobs, plain and simple. They need jobs, they need opportunities. We are dealing with an affordability crisis. We're constantly talking about how you shift the conversation to go from pain to promise, from poverty to prosperity. This is what's happening here. So when you give someone a job, when you give them a chance, you help change the game in that aspect. We are excited that someone will be able to go up and down from 149 to here, up to 161st Street, and see what's possible in this dynamic. Why is this relevant? The Bronx is the most diverse county in America according to the census. There's an 89.7% likelihood that any two people you meet in the Bronx will be a different ethnicity. It matters what happens here. It matters when we empower our African sisters and brothers and being supportive and engaging them. It matters when we elevate all our respective communities. But it matters because we help people get jobs. And so to the governor, this is a continuation of what you've been able to do for us in helping us in this aspect. What have we been able to do in the Bronx? We were able to change the game when it came to raise the age, so that 16 and 17-year-olds weren't tried as adults any longer, because Khalif Browder was our constituent, and Benita was our constituent. We've been able to continue the conversation on minority and women-owned businesses, something you know we talk about all of the time, and investing and spending and developing and empowering them in a real way. When you think about where we're moving forward, the $250 million that came this year from our conversation with Danny and Gustavo and Luis and Marcos and Ruben, and now we have Natalia there to make sure we keep pushing even further right now. It shows what's possible in that aspect. But we bring this together to say thank you to the advocates, because you were a part of this process from start to finish. You're the reason why we're able to figure out how to mobilize in this aspect. It's the reason why we can talk about how now close to $10 million is coming to the Bronx to revitalize what's happening here, so people can see what's possible and people can understand their promises realized. Anytime you come to the Bronx, we want you to know that the possibility is here. So we say thank you. Thank you to the governor. Thank you for believing us, and continue to remind people that anytime you come to the Bronx, good things are going to happen. God bless you.